Hello and welcome to the Real Joy Project. I am Shelby, and today I'm joined with my co-host Jenny and our special guest Mardee. Mardee has been on with us before. It's been actually almost a year since she came on for the very first time with us. On that episode, we talked a lot about adult friendships and kind of our experience with them. Mardee had a little throwback to like the sandbox days, and we talked about how we were using like friendship dating apps and all of those things. So we thought this would be an excellent time to bring Mardee back on. She is the owner of Clarke Counseling Services. And today she's going to share with us some brand new research that she has on friendships and women's health. So, welcome back, Mardee. We're excited to have you here. If you want to go ahead and just get started on some of that new research.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me back. This is just such a cool podcast, such a cool platform, such a cool project. So thank you for having me. So yeah, there's been some cool new stuff coming out about friendships, about the impact on health overall. And I feel like we all kind of have a pretty good awareness that we tend to feel better if we have connections, right? There's such a common, you hear it all the time of like, oh, you need to have a village in order to get through things. And then the new recent thing that I always see on social media is like, remember, in order to have a village, you need to be a good villager. And so there's a ton of information kind of talking about that. There's been, they're not super, super recent, but recent-ish in terms of kind of really looking at the impacts of women's health and things like that. As we know, women have kind of categorically been, for a number of reasons, not wildly included in research. A lot of research tends to be done on, kind of like average males, which leaves out women, obviously, but then lots of ends of the spectrum in terms of health and age and socioeconomic changes, things like that. So this article from, I think it's from, let me see here, National Library of Medicine. It's from 2022. I'm just kind of glancing over and looking at it so I get my dates right. So it talked a lot about just reflecting on overall the impacts of friendships and even looking at like the hormonal changes that can happen when women specifically are met with a stressor. For so long, we've always heard like the fight, flight, freeze. Something new that's being talked about now is kind of the fawn response. This article really looked at something that they refer to as, and we've probably heard it, is like the tend and befriend model. And that is something that seems to be more exclusively related to women and the way that they respond to a stressor. Another study from UCLA talked about just a really anecdotal instance where these researchers were kind of sitting down and chatting and laughing, and one of them made the comment that like when big stressors are happening or research isn't going as planned, all of the women like scientists and neuroscientists, they would like come in, clean up the lab, have coffee, chat. And then versus like when there was stressors or research wasn't necessarily going as planned with like the male researchers, they tend to like sort of seclude themselves in the office. And it kind of brought up just like an interesting like, wait a second, where this is just it seems to be a very stark difference in the way that women respond. So they started kind of looking into it, I guess.
So back up just a little bit. What did you there were two things you said, but one of them was I had never heard of either one. Tend to befriend, is that what you said?
Yeah, it's called Tend and Befriend. So it's this really interesting phenomenon where um, rather than, putting our dukes up, rather than running away, women tend to try to connect to sort of navigate and solve the issue. The study from UCLA talks specifically about how they tend to, women tend to tend to the children in, the group and then befriend the other women. And there was a lot of different reasons that this might happen. One is just right, like way back when we were like cave people. Um, I needed to like ask Shelby, like, hey girl, where'd you get those sick roots? And so kind of was like a very evolutionary purpose, but it's continued like obviously long before that. And ironically, still sometimes being like, hey Shelby, your lunch looked really good that you posted on your Instagram story. Where did you get that from? And so that's kind of the yeah, the tend to befriend. It's that connection rather than sort of that traditional sort of lizard brain response that we might think of.
There was something else that you had said, but I can't remember what the words were, so I don't
Was it in
know.
connection with the like
Yes,
fight flight?
yes. Did you say
Oh,
that's what it was? Did you say fawn?
fawn. Yeah,
Okay,
fawn. It's
okay.
so it's a response where and I always give this example because most women have had this experience when you're young and maybe you're out like out and about, maybe you're at the bar or something, and a dude walks up to you and is like, "Hey, can I get your number?" Our initial response typically is to like smile and play nice and like engage, maybe even give them a fake number. And that's kind of a silly example, right? There's no objective threat or anything, but as a species, perhaps we've learned that women tend to have better outcomes. It's more exclusively a woman used response, not totally, but more often, to kind of have like better, safer outcomes if we play nice, if we smile, if we give a compliment, and then kind of like moonwalk our way out of the situation.
So that's what they call the fawn versus
Fawn. Mhm.
fight or flight. Like, yes.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
you'll see it
Okay.
sometimes talked about like in with instances of like domestic violence and things like that. It may be the question of like, oh, why didn't they X, Y, and Z? Why were they nice? Why were they smiling? Why did they? And it's a survival instinct. And it's
Yes.
rarely like a decision, right? Just like fight or flight. You either do it or you don't.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I never heard of that before.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
newish being used.
Yes. And I can see that in adult friendships too. Just that
Mhm.
that's where I think that women are, I don't know if I don't want to say that we're more curious than men, but I think that we're also curious like about other people. So we will, ask questions and learn about people and which naturally can either lead into a friendship or lead into, either a connection or not. But I
Totally.
feel like we're curious beings.
Yeah, and the research shows that we're actually better at being attuned to like women are in whole better at being attuned to like the needs of others for lots of different reasons, which I think really speaks to that connection because we kind of have this, I don't know, natural organic brain, like, I see what she needs, let me connect there.
Feel that. But it even makes me laugh a little bit. Like there's always that joke about like your husband comes home and he's like, oh, so and so's getting divorced, and you're like, well, what happened? What's going on? And whose
Yeah.
fault is it? And and when's this happening? And who's moving out? And like the woman has all these questions. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. He said they're getting divorced. Like that's like all he knows and all he cares about.
Yep. It was a quick fact. He probably said, "Man, that sucks," and they went
Yep.
about their golf game, right? That's at least my
Yes.
experience with my husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where the women are more curious. And I think it's curiosity, but just also yeah, that natural nurturing of like because if you don't have enough information, how do you help? How do you yeah.
Yeah. The study actually talks about that. They call it co-rumination. It's like again a very exclusively more often used in female to female friendships, and it's exactly that. It's ruminating about the hard stuff. It's ruminating and asking questions and like beating a dead horse, so to speak.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Um, Marty, something last time you spoke about was being vulnerable and like kind of searching out those friendships.
Mhm.
Um, as women, all of us, we can attest to that, like wanting to build that connection and having that community. When I moved down here, that was something that I was really craving, and that was one of the main reasons Jenny and I started the Real Joy Project. But for some of the listeners today that are searching for maybe new friend groups or they're looking to just grow their circle a little bit, what are some ways that maybe you would encourage your clients or just other women to really be like vulnerable and put themselves out there to find those good quality friendships that they're searching for?
That is such a great question. It's actually one that I talk about a lot with my clients. I recently had a conversation where we were talking about like building friendships, and I think as right, like if I'm seeking out a community, I want that person I can co-ruminate with. I want that person I can kind of bare my soul to. But it takes time to get there with somebody, right? A friendship is like any other relationship. There's kind of pits and falls of building trust and learning each other and kind of just feeling out vibes. So one of the things that I think could be really important is to kind of start giving yourself permission to start very surface level. So, oftentimes, like I'll talk to be like, hey, is there anybody at the gym where you like think like her workout outfits are really cool? Anybody at like the school pickup line that like you like their car, like just making those intentional observations to try to engage in like a very surface level, giving yourself permission to be very surface level initially, right? Like maybe you make a yoga friend, and that is just somebody that you go to yoga with until maybe it's not. Maybe she becomes that person that you can bare your soul with, that you can connect with. But I think that that could be something really, really helpful. It takes a little bit of the pressure off of both like myself, right? If I'm seeking to make a friendship, but then it takes sort of the pressure off of like needing this person to be something that not that they're not, but they're just not yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like starting that small talk with them keeps the pressure off from it becoming like, oh, I met a cool or I saw a cool mom in the car pickup line and
Yeah.
now she has to be my instant best friend because I've like found you and you got to be my person now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a lot
Yeah.
of pressure on you to build that relationship. And again, inadvertently, a lot of pressure on them to really meet all of those needs when maybe they are just a yoga friend. Maybe they are just like, oh, it's Tuesday. I see Shelby in the school pickup line. I can't wait to like chat about it. Like maybe it's okay that there's varying levels of connection, different buckets. We brought that up at the beginning, like different buckets that people can go in and they aren't stuck there, but they can be adjusted.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit on those buckets, Marty? So for those listening in, if you didn't catch Marty's first episode with us, she talked a lot about friendship buckets. So could you share with us kind of, are those buckets labeled like they have like a 4 or 5 labels that is like across the board for everyone, or are you helping clients like maybe search out what kind of buckets apply to them and how last time you mentioned moving friends to different buckets at
Mm.
different stages of life. So, those long-term friends that maybe aren't at the same stage of life as you, or
Mhm.
you're starting a new job and you just haven't really connected with that friend in the same way. So could you just talk more about the buckets?
Yeah, yeah. So the I can imagine that there's probably some general columns that people fall into. I find it really helpful to identify like what needs do I have, what needs does the client have in terms of friendship, right? If they're a new mom, they're probably going to need some new mom friends. If they're, just started a new job and moved to a new city, like it might be really helpful to connect with somebody else kind of in that same place. If they're, maybe their kids have just moved out, or maybe they're, a million and one different reasons. So identifying what needs somebody has is typically where I would start that process and where I usually encourage people to just start in general. Oftentimes I I think of them as like, who are your cheer you up friends, right? These might be like the three columns. Who are the friends that you go to? They're gonna crack a joke. They're gonna say a snotty comment about your ex, right? That's just gonna hit just right. Um, Maybe you have friends that those might be like your, yeah, like your distraction type friends, right? Maybe those are the friends that take you out, buy you dinner, buy you a drink, those kind of friends. And then maybe you have friends that are a little bit more like where you do that again, that co-rumination, where you sit and you have coffee and maybe you really, it's very emotional. And so often there's a lot of different needs, say in those two columns, that might need then separate buckets. But that's kind of I guess as I'm thinking this through as you're asking me, those are kind of the two biggest ones that oftentimes we start with. And again, people can flip-flop, right? Who maybe I go out to supper with might also be somebody I call on the phone, when all hell breaks loose. But maybe not. And that again, that gets to be okay because there's different buckets that people fall in. Did I answer
And
that?
I think that, um,
Sorry.
and yeah, and I think too that, there's like there's all the different seasons of our lives, and so I like how you say like people can move into different buckets. Their friendship buckets can change during that time. Like when I was a stay-at-home mom, and with other stay-at-home moms, we had so much time together, and
Mhm.
then everybody's kids went to school and everybody got jobs, and now it's like it was such a fast change. It was really hard for me for a long time, and I really missed those women, and I still do miss them, but I know, I mean, I understand that everybody's just in a different spot. And who's not to say that like 10 years down the road when all of our kids are graduating, maybe we'll get to take little trips together or do fun things. But and then there's those friendships that you have over the years, and yeah, you move away or things just change and you see once a year that just want like a couple hours with them can fill your bucket, so to speak, if we're speaking in
Yeah.
buckets. And you can step back away, and it's like I still consider those people some of my dearest friends. And
Mhm.
like if I needed them, I know they would be here, and I don't have to talk to them all of the time. And I think we've all just reached a different level of our maybe a maturity and all that, of knowing that that's okay. I feel like when you're young, there's the pressure of like, oh my God, nobody, they don't call me, nobody likes me anymore. And it's like, no, their lives are just busy. And I think when you become a mom, that's one of the times you really start to understand that. Like, oh, that's why she didn't have time to call me before. Because now you're living it if you're in that like stage with little kids and things like that. Hmm.
Like, yeah, you bring up such a good point of like it happens, while it happens naturally, it happens so fast that I think that can really bring up that sense of loneliness and that craving, which I think often leads to exactly what you said of like a little bit of anger of like, why don't they call me? Why doesn't this look the same? And even though it's so natural, it is very much just, it is kind of just like the ebb and flow of life. Most of the time it's a natural change.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to like just miss them. And sometimes I'll even reach out and just like, man, I miss you guys, and everybody's, and we're all busy, everyone, including myself. And so, but it's fun to look back and have memories and just think of the time we had together. It's like I never would have made it through that stage of my life without those people in my life. So it's just amazing. So what do you recommend for a woman who is going through a transition, whether that is all of a sudden they're a mom, or all of a sudden they go back to work after being a mom for a long time, or we have a lot of women in our community who are retired too, who have brought up to us that it's hard to make friendships when they leave their job, because that's where all they had those people for years around them, and now all of a sudden they're at home. And so we've had that question brought up a lot in our group too.
Yeah, that is such a good question. Like when those really significant life changes happen, what do we do to kind of fill all of a sudden this big space, whether it's something that we've lost or we've gained, right, due to a transition? Again, I think I would encourage people to identify like what are their needs, right? So we know the need is friendship, but then again, like what kind of friendship? If you're navigating like the retirement, what is the kind of friendship that you're seeking? Do you need that friendship? Because again, when you get to the age of retirement, you're also moving into a stage of development where you're really starting to look back on your life and starting to reflect on like, okay, what did I give and what did I get? And it's a lot of, it's really a time of for many people, like very deep reflection. And I think that in that case could be a really important question to ask is especially in friendship is like, do I need friends that say I'm recognizing like I want to give more to my community. I want to be a part of something besides just work. And I think that asking maybe those questions of like what are my needs as a human and then how do I kind of marry those into a friendship could be really powerful because then again, suddenly you have a friend that you meet at here we have a really wonderful organization. It's called Feed My Starving Children. And it's just you can go, you pack food boxes, and it's also like a really cool way to meet people because you get teamed up and teamwork just naturally supports bonds because you're competing against other teams, and there's like a little bit of trash talking that happens. It's a really cool, really cool volunteer opportunity here. But, so you go from having a friend that like, oh, on Tuesdays I see you, we pack boxes. Again, it just kind of has the opportunity to naturally grow in a way that maybe feels very authentic to the friendship needs, the friendship bubbles, but also then like thinking of like the developmental, like, do I need to give back? Do I need a little bit of a break? Then I also need to find a friend who's like, yeah, I want to go have a margarita by the pool and like I've done my time. Let me enjoy this season of life where I have room to make my own decisions. And then finding again somebody who meets that need, who's like, yeah, girl, let's go for a walk in the park. Let's have a cocktail or let's have a cup of tea, whatever your vibe is, and just exist because we've been like rat racing for so long.
So for somebody who, I agree with that, like if somebody who's through the season that they're like, I need a break. I've been volunteering and I've been working. Where do you recommend or how do you recommend they find other people in that same season?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I don't know about you guys, but in times where I've been very caught up in work, I've lost track of the things that I like to do. Like suddenly I'm not reading, suddenly I'm not going for runs, suddenly I'm not doing hobbies. And so that might be a place again where I would encourage people to look and ask themselves like, what do I enjoy doing? And oftentimes I find the answer to that question is like, oh, I don't know. And it's the same, I get the same answer really from like very different stages of life. New moms give me the same thing. I'm like, well, what would help you, like, what would you enjoy? And they're like, oh, a shower. And it's like, oh yeah, we need to we need to ask some questions here. So, starting and asking ourselves, like, okay, I've done the rat race, I've done work, I did the volunteering. What do I just like to do? What just feeds my soul a little bit? Usually I ask for people to trust the process a little bit. Sometimes I think the idea of like anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. So if it's like, I love art, go take an art class. Who cares if you can only draw a stick figure? Like, that's okay. Just starting to give yourself permission to explore and be like bad, right? Bad at hobbies, bad at whatever this thing is because it is new. Um, and then again, taking that from there of like, what do I like to do? And then using that as a bridge to make connections. They're wonderful. Um, there's a couple wonderful apps out there. One's called the Meetup app. I think I might have spoken about that before. And that one is really cool because you can put in like where you live, what you like to do, and then when you go, the cool thing is like everybody there is also there because they're wanting to make connections. So there's not any of that like, oh, does this person want to talk to me? It's kind of like it's a given. If you're at this like Saturday 10:15 yoga class, there's a really good chance that everybody else is there to do the same thing.
I can definitely relate to that as a mom. I'm sure retirement age too, if you can attend something middle of the week, midday, chances are I'm probably meeting up with other moms that are either like also staying home or working from home, but they just have that time available to them to get out and go do those things. So I feel like right there, that kind of gives you a little bit of a leg up to have something in common because you already have commonalities that brought you to that specific, art class or workout class
Mhm.
at that time. So thanks for bringing that part up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, you kind of talked about like wanting like the easy, low maintenance friendships. Like, I feel like as I've gotten older, I've really tried to search out those low maintenance friends. It doesn't take a lot of work. I don't have to put a ton of work into the friendship too. Um, but have you found that people feel they kind of still have to like perform or like put on a show when really they're like, I'm trying to be the low maintenance friend, but they're like trying to impress people a little too much and like making it maybe a little more difficult to make friends. And if so, like what advice are you giving them to be like, hey, it's okay, like go be the low maintenance friend that you're searching for?
It's interesting. That comes up most often in terms of dating. Just in terms of that performative, like, yes, I love to go hiking every single Saturday, right? Like, no, I want to lie in bed and like eat Chinese food that I had last night for breakfast. Um, and I think sometimes that can happen. In terms of friendships, it's interesting. I don't hear that a ton as far as the like sliding into almost the like people pleasing aspect of it. I tend to notice things tend to be a little more often all or nothing, right? Like I know I want a low maintenance friendship, but additionally, at the beginning, friendships do require a little bit of maintenance in order to get them up and started. So more often what I see is the barrier of like, I don't know if I have the space or maybe my anxiety level feels a little bit too high to jump into like the early parts of maintenance, so I might do nothing. That's what I hear more often. I think ironically, it's probably a little bit of the same piece, right? Because it is like I have to give my 110% or else I might as well just stay home. But I find at least in my circle, more often my people are choosing to just stay home, for a million and one reasons, but that tends to be a what I notice from that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like just as women, right, we kind of all have that. I know Jenny and I have talked about like we're either doing it 110% or we're not doing at all.
Yeah.
Just having that mentality and, just trying to be perfect human beings, which we all know is unrealistic. But trying not to let that carry over into friendships and especially brand new ones too. Just not setting yourself up for those unrealistic expectations.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and the other side of that is if we set ourselves up for that unexpected, expectations in a friendship, it puts pressure on the other person. And so like by us letting go of some of that, it's helped. Like my hope that when I can let down my guard and be vulnerable and some of that is allowing other people to be too. And then I think we can build stronger friendships in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's kind of a like if I can model it, maybe we'll both be able to get what we need out of this dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've really just learned to just admit if I'm nervous. So I like meeting new people if I'm at some sort of event and just admitting it because most of the other people there are too, And like you said, even if you're at an event that is designed for you to meet new people, there's still a lot of people in there that are nervous. Like we're all here for the same reason, but how many of those people had to like really push themselves to get there outside of their comfort zone?
Right. Yeah. How many of them have a therapist that was like, hey, you're going to that event on Tuesday at 10, like we talked about, right? Right? They're like,
Exactly.
shoot.
How much would it cost for me to bring you along with me?
Exactly. Would you be interested in coming with me?
Will you
Well,
be one?
Yeah.
and the funny thing is, like, you can take that one of two ways, I guess. If you'd be like, I just could tell people there, hey, my therapist made me come. Some people would understand that right away and be like,
Totally.
oh my gosh, mine too, And somebody else might be like, oh my goodness.
Yes, it's funny. I do tell clients, I'm like, blame it on me. Like, if I were talking about expressing something, I actually recently had a conversation where we were talking about like opening up to a friend. And she came back and she was like, I told her that you were gonna yell at me if I didn't. I don't think I've never yelled in my life at a client, right? But she was like, I told her you were gonna be really mad, really yell at me if I didn't tell her how I was feeling. And I was like, I love that. Like, blame
Yeah,
it. Blame it on me. Blame
yes.
it on your therapist. Blame it on your mom, your dad,
Yeah.
your husband.
I tell my girls that they can blame things on me, and my husband and I will joke about it sometimes. Like, just blame it on me. Like, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
but I'll tell my girls that who are 17 and 19, and
Mhm.
I've been telling them that for a long time. Like that there's times that you can just say, yeah, just blame it on me. It's okay.
Mhm.
I can
Yeah.
take it. I can handle it.
Yeah.
Um, and but I bet by being open and honest when you say that to somebody else, they're thinking, yeah, either their therapist told them the same thing, that's why they're there, or they're like, who's your therapist? Because I could really use one. It just allows people to become vulnerable and open.
Mhm.
And I just think that that's so important. That's something on the Real Joy Project we're trying to talk about is just real talk, like being real. Because if we're all out there pretending to be something we're not, that is not helping anybody. It's not helping ourselves and it's not helping anybody around us.
Mm, yeah, 105%. It really is really just kind of an unfortunate waste of everyone's time, mostly ours, if we're not being, authentic. And specifically when it comes to building friendships. And I think that speaks to like the other side of friendships is like letting go of friendships. There are times where for a number of different reasons, friendships have run their course, and that it's really, really painful. I think one of the research studies I was reading talked about how like I, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but like the scale of pain is like at sometimes even more intense than like the ending of like a romantic relationship when there's like a breakup of a friend. And so there is kind of that natural sometimes things just run their course, and that speaks to like again you get to move somebody to other buckets, they get to move you to other buckets, and that gets to be okay. It's just kind of life. Painful, we can
Mhm.
acknowledge that, but normal.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was actually my next question. I had an experience shortly after moving down to Houston. I was using, Facebook mom groups and the Bumble BFF app to meet people. And I won't go into too many details, but I had made a very good friend. We connected right away. And some things just, it got a little weird there for a while, and that friendship has since ended. But what advice could you give to somebody who's maybe in a similar situation where they're kind of battling with the do I keep this friend in one of my buckets or is it time to just take them out of the bucket and move on from that friendship? Like what are there certain steps they can take or how are they identifying kind of like the pros and cons of that friendship that's maybe just not going well for them?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I feel like this is so often what you'll hear me come back to for 90% of topics ever is really looking at like what are my needs. If I'm going into this friendship and more often than not, I'm leaving with my bucket empty, right? Like I feel drained. I'm also noticing, right? Like, does it seem like their bucket is getting filled? That's something that I think we can forget sometimes is like really taking into account, like, okay, I know I'm feeling this way, but like, what are my cues that maybe this person is also experiencing like a misalignment in this friendship? And then I suppose giving yourself permission to kind of grieve that, because it really is, the end of a relationship. And most of us have been through, right, like a dramatic breakup. Maybe it was like, your 13-year-old boyfriend or whatever. And so we have a context of what like romantic relationship breakdowns might look like. I don't think we talk as much about the grieving process when it comes to like especially like a woman to woman friendship ending because this person holds like an awful lot of your secrets, right? Because there could be fear of like, oh, are they going to use this against me? That's sometimes what I hear from people. Are they going to throw this back at me, especially if it's like a work friendship kind of thing? And so there can be a lot of different emotions that are present. And I think encouraging yourself to have the opportunity to kind of grieve the hole that might be left by this person. And also kind of acknowledging, right? Like nothing is forever. There's every chance that in the future, everybody's on a different playing field and there can be a cordial acquaintance bucket that this person fills because there is that background. But really giving the permission to just kind of hurt through it. Because it is such a grieving process and such a loss of often when those relationships break up. Because if it wasn't a close relationship, suddenly you're just not texting each other as much, you're not exchanging memes as much. But when it's a close friendship, that's where the breakup happens, and that's where I think the grief can really come into play, and giving yourself permission to like hurt that, right? Emotional pain activates the same centers of the brain as like a broken arm. It's pain is pain.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that was something really new to me. That was like my first adult friendship that it was like a really great connection. I was excited to have a mom friend, and it was one of my like first friends down here. And so when all of that was happening, I know my husband would get like an earful from me. Um but it was probably something honestly that I needed to talk to my therapist about at the time and like just didn't because I had other topics I was discussing with her. But it's interesting that you say that it's like a really bad relationship breakup because it hurt, it was confusing, it was really hard, and it probably took 6 to 8 months for me to like really be at terms with like, okay, like it's gonna be okay, you know. So yeah, that's very interesting that it's like that strong of a effect on us.
Yeah, sometimes our girlfriends know more about us than our partner,
Yeah.
right? Just on the day to day, especially I think like right, like if you're in a season of life where you're having lots of connection or lots of time together, they see the inner workings. They see the hard moments, right? I have a toddler, like they see the hard moments where my eyes twitching. My husband may not see those, right? So there's a vulnerability that sometimes our girlfriends have that maybe our partner just doesn't have access to in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they're going through
Yeah.
something very similar to you that your spouse might not be able to understand at that
Completely.
moment.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Um, what are some of the tools and just different things that you can use to stay in touch with friends? Um, like an example is I feel like sometimes you have to be really intentional at certain seasons of your life. I have a friend from high school, and I don't know if we probably might even be pushing 15 years on this already. We get together twice a year at minimum for our birthdays. It's not on our birthdays. It's sometimes not even in the month of our birthdays, but one's in February, one's in September. So they're spread out. But we always do, and we have never missed one over the years. And like I said, sometimes it's 2 months late, but it's super intentional. Like we're doing this, whether and we live an hour apart, but our kids are in different directions and all the things. It might be that we get together for lunch, or we might go drive 2 hours away and go shopping all day long. It just depends on the scenario, but we're very intentional about that. And the other tool that I use, so intention is one thing, but is I have Shelby and I were talking about this yesterday. I have some friends that are on Marco Polo,
Mhm.
which is an app,
Yep.
and it's a video app that you can like leave a video, and we have a rule like there's no emergency. When you hear it, you hear it. But it's so nice because I can go for a walk and like listen to their messages and then respond to them. It's like going for a walk with a friend. Not everybody likes that. There's some that are like, yeah, I am not sending you a video app. And there's others that are. And I have grown so close to some of those women because it is almost like a personal journal. Like you're frustrated, you can go for a walk and get on there. And by the time you're done, you're like, I said way too much. But there's a couple of friends that we have rules that we're like, we don't apologize and we don't delete.
Yep.
That's our rule. And we became really close because we get pretty vulnerable in there.
Yes. Such two wonderful examples of like the in-person intentionality. And then I love that you guys set rules because I also have a couple friends on Marco Polo and it is, right? I'm like doing the dishes and I'm like, and then, and at the end I'm like, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, I guess. And so I love that you made the parameters that you can't delete it, you can't apologize. Like it's such an opportunity to be so real.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And then the rule of like, if it's like I need an urgent response, we will text each other. Like, please listen.
Yep.
Otherwise, there's no pressure. If it takes you 3, 4, 5 days, that's okay because life happens.
Mhm.
I've gotten to love it so much that like you said, doing dishes. Sometimes I go to make supper and I'm sad because I don't have a Marco Polo.
Yeah, it's like your own personal podcast you're listening to.
Yes, yes, it's so fun. But what are some other tools that you suggest to people to keep friendships going, to keep that fire going, whether even if it's only twice a year or,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think intentionality is the basis of all of that. I talk a lot about we are at such an age of technology where there's kind of this weird thing of like where we can always reach out, but then we're always accessible. And so it's a very double-edged sword. And so I talk with people a lot about like, there are things that you can do to take advantage of it, right? Like iPhones have the really cool feature of like a send later. So if it's
Mhm.
3 o'clock in the morning and you happen to be up and you're like, oh, I haven't texted Jenny in a while, right? I can pop open my phone, be like, okay, send at 8:45. Hey, Jenny, just thinking about you. Like, hope you're doing well. Here's what's up with me. So kind of using like when you feel the urge in the moment, acting on it, because with very busy lives, that urge is going to come and go. The reminder, right? There's a good chance if I didn't do it then, you might not hear from me for 3 weeks later, when I'm like, oh shoot, I was going to message her and I forgot. So I think, taking advantage of the tech tools, um, Marco Polo is such a great one. I also have a lot of friends who will just do voice messages back and forth. So again, it's not like the stop and text, it's kind of on their way to work, providing a little bit of an update. So really leaning into like the bits of tech that are very helpful for this. I also often think it can be really important to like I guess give grace in terms of right if we're wanting to be in a low maintenance friendship, that means that there are times where between birthday one and birthday two, you might not talk to your friend for 2, 3 months, and like having some grace that is okay. And in I guess, alternate, checking in with your friend and making sure that they're on the same page as you. Like, hey, we're really busy right now. Kind of those things, having the fail safes, right? Like, hey, you need to listen to this immediately. And having the kind of open communication to use those things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just keeping that open and just understanding our friendship has definitely reached that level that we know like sometimes there is months that like you just don't talk to each other. And luckily we have, of course, Facebook and things like that to kind of keep up in between. Um, but it is, I just love that we intentionally have that. We know we have that meeting coming up. So, and then we can talk all day long and it's great. It's like, yeah, like the whole day long. And then it's like, you're still, as they drive away, you're like, oh, I forgot to tell her this and that. but, but yeah, and just respecting grace on both ends, grace
Yeah.
to yourself and grace to them. Yes.
Yeah, most often things are not personal, right? There's often that concept in relationships, right? Where like we never want to assume malicious intent, where it's just ignorance, right? Where it's just a sense of a gap in knowledge, a gap in awareness. And I think not always, right? There are situations in which we wrap up friendships, we move them to other buckets, but most often we can assume with our friends, especially long-term friends, things are not malicious. And so sometimes depersonalizing that can be really, really big in maintaining long-term friendships.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I think I have a friend, her and I've been friends since college, and we had a talk at her wedding back in September because we both kind of felt that our friendship was not what it used to be. We lived states away from one another, and um, I think we both felt the tension, and we were kind of like thinking the other person was intentionally trying to hurt one another. Like we were like, we need to sit down, and we got to sit down in person, which was really nice, so it didn't have to be like over the phone or anything. But we kind of hashed it out, and like it was the realization of we had both put each other on these pedestals and had expectations of like, well, you were my best friend in college and we would do all these things together. So then when that person wasn't being there, it was like, well, you're not being a very good friend at all. And so we talked about kind of giving each other a break on that front, and being okay with that, but also how we could be more intentional moving forward because we're both at completely different stages of life now. And so that was another hurdle we were trying to tackle was just like you're doing this thing and I'm doing this. And so we felt we weren't having like things in common anymore too. So we had talked about like how can we be really intentional, like you brought up, Jenny, of hey, we give each other grace for a few months, but like maybe we don't allow it to go more than 3 months without talking with one another. And maybe it needs to be an actual phone call, or we try to meet up one time a year, having those baseline things. But and that was a hard reality check, I think, for both of us to be like, oh, you're not personally trying to hurt me, and we just want to make this friendship as good as it can be still. So yeah, that was kind of a interesting moment, but yeah.
Such a beautiful like way to go about that because it would have been easy to just like go to this wedding and then be like, she doesn't like me anymore. And then like again, move out of buckets, but to take kind of the courage and sit down and be like, something is up. That's such a like beautifully mature way to handle a really, really fraught situation.
Yeah, and I think we both felt like we had invested so much into our friendship because of, 15, 16 years of being friends with someone. Like, there's a lot of history and things that have gone into it. And I think part of it was like the fear too, right? That I no longer really know who you are and understand who you are. And I want you to be in my life, but you're just not in my life as much as you used to be. So, it was kind of just a scary thing for both of us too to accept that. And I'm really glad that we sat down in person and talked about it too, because I think when you were going back and forth in text or even on the phone call, things are missed, you're not understanding. And but we had to sit down and be vulnerable with one another for sure.
Mhm. Huge. Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
well,
that's
Marty,
awesome.
if you could leave one piece of advice to anyone listening today, what would it be? Whether it's to get out there and find some new friends or how they can keep cultivating and maintaining those really good friendships that they have, what's something that you would leave all of us with today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that maybe I would reflect back to something you guys have heard me say a ton, which was like check in with what needs are going unmet, right? If we're having big feelings, that usually is an indicator that there's something that we need. And especially if we're having big feelings when it comes to connection and friendships, relationships, whether it's maintaining having a hard conversation, checking in on what's being missed, checking on those needs, but also in terms of like if I'm in a season of life and there's a gap in my connections, like what are the needs that are underlying that and how do I start? A big believer in anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. So if you go to a paid class and it's terrible, okay. You can also just like never go again because you're probably never going to see these people again. You can go to a different paint class, or you can just go back and be like, hey, turns out I'm a really bad painter. That's why I'm here. Turns out that's why there's a class for this stuff. So maybe that same thing applies to just like finding friends in general. It's just like letting yourself be quote unquote bad at it until it starts to feel a little bit smoother.
I love
Awesome.
that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's been awesome having you on here today. Shelby, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I just appreciate having you come on again, Marty. Our last conversation with you was so much fun, and I feel like at the end of it, we kind of left off, and the conversation ended with, "Man, we got to do this again. We got to continue this conversation." And even before we hopped on the call today, I feel like we were already talking on some topics too for the future. So thank you again for joining us, and we would love to have you back on again in the near future.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you guys so much for your time and just having this platform for all of us. I know it's such a great example of like the joys of technologies to have things like this set up. So thank you guys for being that.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope anybody who's listening, if you have found something today that you find valuable, or if you have any questions for Marty or any of us, just drop them below in the comments. And we would love to get back to you if we can, or if you have anything else that you want us to talk about, just let us know. And make sure to click like if you enjoyed listening and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on future conversations. So thank you, ladies, so much. Always a great conversation with you, Mardee. And this subject is just something I think we can talk about again and again.
Totally, totally so important.
Yes.
Thank you guys. And the research is backing it. So that's really, really cool. And even the health benefits, and we didn't even talk about the physical health benefits, but it backs all of it, emotional, physical, all of it. So thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. There, we'll continue on that note next time. All right. Thanks,
You guys.
ladies.